Right, so you would imagine the collapse of Welsh governance as something even the mainstream media, as pathetic as ours, might want to pass comment on. But apparently not. As a government that has been mired in chaos as a direct result of Keir Starmer's interference in candidate selections there, reaches its inevitable conclusion after just 4 months, and it has all gone to pieces. Following ministerial resignations beginning this morning, the deeply scandalised Starmer-roid First Minister of Wales, Vaughan Gething, has finally given in and resigned, following months of frankly putting his own self-interest before the interest of Wales. I can't imagine what Starmer found in common with him, but having now stood down, should it really have taken so much scandal to get to this point at last? And will we now see a new set of elections as is being called for, or will there be another Starmer-style imposition on the people of Wales instead? Right, so the story of now outgoing First Minister of Wales, Vaughan Gething, should be a warning to Keir Starmer and those supportive of him, in that no matter how the polls might favour him, that doesn't necessarily insulate him from political fallout, especially when in no uncertain terms it is interference in electoral procedures, as we've seen in so many places across the country under his leadership, that have brought this sorry state of affairs in Wales to its inevitable conclusion. Perhaps a lot quicker than some expected, but thanks to such meddling in order to get the preferred candidate elected, the Welsh Government has basically now collapsed. The Senate only has 11 cabinet ministers, so 3 of them quitting, plus the resignation of the Council General, one of 4 ministerial posts, means it might only be a handful of people at the end of the day to make a complete hash of things, but ultimately, this is the end of what has seemed like a very long road, but actually it's only been 4 months. 118 days to be exact, so Vaughan Gething has managed to last for roughly 2 Liz Trusses. He must have been glad that nobody was timing the longevity of his stint in charge in Wales to that of a lettuce on this occasion, though. Gething has been mired in scandal since he held the health brief in the Senate. Chipgate, as it was called for him, apparently called eating chips in the park with his son during lockdown was akin to Beergate for Keir Starmer, but like Starmer, that one didn't end up leaving him with any lasting damage, seemingly, and he was still able to progress his political career up to taking a tilt at replacing Mark Drakeford as First Minister, running as he was then against Jeremy Miles, himself soft left at best, certainly not Starmery either though. Perhaps him running against Stephen Kinnock in 2014 to be selected as Labour candidate for Aberavon went against him. That was what made him seem too much of a lefty. You're to the left of Kinnock, but who knows? Either way, Gething was more Starmer's sort, and so it seems he had to be the chosen one. And there's been reason to suspect interference in the process to choose the next Labour leader in Wales and by default First Minister to ensure that Gething won. Now, vote rigging was not new to Labour at this point. We'd had the scandal of the anonavoter internal voting system used by Labour, provided to them by close associates in Croydon of current Labour General Secretary David Evans by this point. But this was a whole new non-anonavoter related vote rigging story, as this time it concerned the manipulation of the organised communication system that Labour uses to have delivered the Welsh First Ministership to Vaughan Gething. So while the anonavoter scandal was slowly gaining a bit more attention at this point, the organised system was the email communication system between members used at the national and constituency level within the Labour Party, and it was what basically connects members in this digital age that we live in. It is ostensibly therefore a neutral system, it's for communications, but as far as the selection process went for Labour's selection for the First Minister of Wales role, a role not up for election itself at that time, so whoever got picked became the new Welsh First Minister. And it ended up being reported by Nation Cymru that Welsh Labour members were apparently told to not use Organise to support either the eventual winner Vaughan Gething or his rival at the time for the post, Jeremy Miles. And the message members were apparently sent read, "We would like to remind all Organise users that the use of Labour Party systems to promote a leadership candidate or send emails on behalf of campaign teams is strictly prohibited. Any use of this nature will be seen as a serious breach of your use of Organise and will result in your account being suspended and possibly further action. Thanks, Welsh Labour." Now that was sent out just 2 days before the vote was held, and it was very much appeared that Organise was being used to promote Vaughan Gething well before this, despite it being not allowed. And the reason for that is if internal campaigning starts taking place across the main Labour Party system for communications, for one, it can obviously lend an unfair advantage to one candidate or the other, and for two, would likely end up burying important other messages and communiques that members need to see. Yet there is evidence it was being used to help Vaughan Gething gain a potentially unfair advantage, and given he was Starmer's pick, this made, in light of every other selection process interference story and vote rigging scandal that we knew of, all the more believable. And on top of that, there were the shenanigans where the trade unions were concerned as well, as on top of the issue with Organise, Welsh Labour General Secretary Joe McIntyre emailed trade union affiliates, who were members of the trade unions who were affiliated to Labour. They're not necessarily Labour members themselves, because they still had a vote in this contest as well, providing information to them that favoured Gething, leading to accusations of Welsh Labour itself trying to rig its own contest, though given how Labour has behaved nationally, it is entirely plausible and believable that such instruction, if true, came from higher up the Starmerroid food chain than just Welsh Labour. And there are also allegations of vote rigging in favour of Gething within the affiliate trade union Unite, led by the Starmer supporting, as she is, Sharon Graham. A recently introduced rule at that time under Graham's tenure was that the union would only endorse candidates for political office if they had previously been union lay officials. This ended up ruling Jeremy Miles out immediately, following an intervention from the regional secretary of Unite, despite him having been a Unite member for some time. Gething had only joined Unite a few months earlier and won Unite's endorsement subsequently, before finally coming out that new rule Unite had cited in order to knock back Miles didn't actually apply to that election, giving this situation all the hallmarks of another Starmer-style fix. Then we finally get to the point where Gething became First Minister. Upon becoming First Minister, Gething's problems didn't go away, not least of which the most famous issue he had, which was, of course, explaining away a £200,000 donation given to him, which is an insanely large donation in Welsh Government terms, by a man who had twice been convicted of environmental offences pertaining to dumping waste on a conservation site, once for dumping it, and again for refusing to remove it. Makes it very difficult to believe Gething would ever clamp down on environmental damage after taking said sums from such a person, not least of which afterwards Gething was found to have asked Natural Resources Wales to ease restrictions on that businessman's companies, and the Development Bank of Wales also made huge loans totalling around some £400,000 to a firm owned by that same donor. Never having had to deal with this matter, it has continued to dog Gething as he became further embroiled in some more self-inflicted problems. Following messages being leaked from a WhatsApp group that Gething wanted deleted, he accused then Minister for Social Partnership Hannah Blythyn of being the leak, which she denied, but Gething nonetheless sacked her over the matter, and he hadn't really proven that it was her either at that point. And this ended up being one piece of evidence cited shortly thereafter by Tory MS Darren Miller, whom, when he brought a motion of no confidence against Gething just last month, which Gething ended up losing by 29 votes to 27, with two members off ill as it happened, one of which coincidentally just happened to be Hannah Blythyn. And it was for this reason Gething complained he had lost, but in actuality, if members of his own Labour Party hadn't also backed that no confidence motion against him, it should never have been an issue. Being a non-binding vote, however, it was ultimately academic, and Gething remained unmoved. He ended up calling it a gimmick, which is pretty arrogant. It's just total contempt, especially when members of his own party voted against him here. Then this morning, it all imploded, as 4 ministers quit, including Jeremy Miles, who was up until this morning the Economy Secretary, along with Julie James, the Housing Minister, Leslie Griffiths, the Culture and Social Justice Minister, and Mick Antoniou, the Counsel General. A quarter of the Welsh Government, pretty much, as that roughly speaking amounts to, leaving Welsh Labour in disarray, leaving the Welsh Government in disarray, and calls coming for elections, even though they aren't due in Wales until 2026. First off, we can't have a rerun of the interference, whatever happens next, be it elections or a new Labour, well, it'll have to be an election for a new Labour leader in Wales, but whether that becomes a new First Minister automatically or whether we have new elections to elect the First Minister, we'll have to wait and see. But whatever happens, given what happened last time with Gething, that likely won't satisfy everybody if there isn't a full election to elect all seats and all posts and a new First Minister. And also, if a budget can't get passed in the autumn, which Gething was widely suspected to be on course to fail to do, then this hasn't necessarily been headed off at this point either, because Labour only hold 30 of the 60 Senate seats. They're on a knife edge with it. They will need their own party whole again, plus still need other parties to work with them in order to pass a budget. And they could ardently refuse en masse to help Labour and do that without these new elections. Welsh Labour divisions have now reopened big time as well, when they really need some unity. And who can blame them? When some feel that with Starmer as a party national leader, he'll favour one faction over others regardless of democracy, just as he seemingly did before. There's no trust between factions of the Labour Party. The fractures are becoming rather permanent. And as with all things Starmer, trust is just one thing we will see him lose more and more of. Because he is just fundamentally a chronically awful, untrustworthy individual, always pushing his own agenda rather than letting democracy run its course. He has to be in control. That control freakery is stoking division, not bringing the party together. There's an argument they could just let runner-up Jeremy Miles have it at this point. But Gething still has loyalists to him in Labour, in Welsh Labour, who just won't allow that. And given his resignation helped lead to Gething's final downfall, that must count for double. It's a mess. It's Starmer made in no small part. Gething made as well. Don't let him off the hook by any stretch either. If he conducts the next Labour leadership race, as I think there has to be, as Starmer did before, then there will be no happy families afterwards. And I think the people of Wales will rightly be appalled at this party, Labour, who have been in charge in Wales for 25 years, falling apart at the seams on them for the most avoidable and ridiculous and crooked and bent reasons. Meanwhile, on the matter of Labour donations that are decidedly dubious, here's a video recommendation covering just how badly some others are bought and paid for, seemingly by vested interests too. Not least Starmer himself, naturally. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.